were obviously the best. So that conversation's over. So this, just to explain this, this is my name in Hangul, Korean Shin, Sanyang, the family name first, and this is my name in Hanja, or Chinese, Korean as written in Chinese, which it was for centuries before the 1400s, when the king decided everyone should be literate and commissioned a new alphabet from court linguists, and the commoners could read and write. And so, but these have different meanings, or the Shin Sun Young has different meanings based on whatever the Chinese is. So the translation, so Shin Sun Young, the translation is pungent, good, bud. Pot smokers. What? That was like amazing joke. Marijuana is legal in Minnesota. It's not, it's like just okay. So Sean Hill, ooh, I give you an extra capital I.
That's all right.
Sean Hill, our fearless leader. This is his bio, which you can get from American Academy of Poets. And then here are his 2 books, Dangerous Goods and Blood Ties and Brown Liquor. And there's another one forthcoming. We're very excited. So I'm going to read a poem by him that I presume was written here at some point in his former tenure. The Sun in Bemidji, Minnesota, by Sean Hill. The sun isn't even a pearl today, its light diffused, strained gray by winter haze. This is the grayest day so far, so when I enter the Wells Fargo parking lot, the last thing I expect is to see the sun in the car next to mine. I watch a woman make out with the sun, and I'm jealous of the sun. Beautiful beyond her desire, wanting the sun so, she almost glows as she tugs sweetness from his whiskers with her teeth, and his drool runs down her chin. I think the sun is a man, but it's hard to tell in this light. No, it's a mango, and I'm jealous of her. He has several poems with the word Bemidji in the title. Go search them, they're all wonderful. So I'm going to read a few poems and from my last 3 books of poetry. And so in the Wet Hex, which is the most recent, aside from the one that's coming out in August, Princess Bari, the abandoned princess, the ancestor of all shamans in Korea, connecting the world of humans and the gods. So I have declared her patron goddess of this reading. So I'll read from my 2nd, 3rd, and 4th hybrid poetry, essay, fiction, picture books. So this Unbearable Splendor, before I read something from it, it is, well, the 2nd book, Rough and Savage, is directly taken from Inferno of Dante, but then more of it continued on into this book. So the Robert Pinsky verse translation, which is also bilingual, is a really incredible translation of the Inferno. Please check it out. It came out in 1996. Really matched my theme, so I just needed to put it in there. And then here's an original. And so from one of my great interests in the Divine Comedy is my interest in Greek literature, epics, and then Catholic literature. I grew up Catholic, and a lot of my writing cannot avoid it, so just fair warning. I just have a little political, Italian poet. Was there a nation-state Italy? No. Did they call it Italis? Yes. Here's this. I will be asking him for permission later. Brian Flynn, thank you in advance. He did this incredible diagram of Dante's Inferno, and I'm just fascinated with these maps of virtue, maps of crimes, and how crime and punishment continues to be a really significant part of our organizing our societies and our relationships. Switching to another topic that's in Unbearable Splendor, this is Masahiro Mori, who is still with us, born in 1927. He published Bukini no Tani in 1970, which I think is the same year as the Perpetual Orgy came out, or right around. So it's a special year, and that translates as Uncanny Valley in the magazine Energy. So the idea is that as robots become more human-like, they appear more familiar until a point is reached at which subtle imperfections of appearance make them look eerie. And so it relates to the first poem, or the first long poem in Unbearable Splendor. The whole book is my thinking through the politics of hospitality, about migration, immigration, guest-host relations. In 1974, the year I was born in South Korea, Mori published The Buddha in the Robot, a robot engineer's thoughts on science and religion, in which he discussed the metaphysical implications of robotics. He said, "I believe robots have the Buddha nature within them, that is, the potential for attaining Buddhahood." Really very interesting. And he's gone on to continue to do robotics and robotics theology. It's wild. So this is, next is going to be an excerpt from this. It's actually a piece of fiction I titled Valley Uncanny. It was originally published in the Encyclopedia Project, Volume 3, edited by Tisa Bryant, Miranda Mellis, and Katie Amar. And I'm just going to show you, there's several volumes, but I'm in 1, 2, and 3. And they're just really cool books. It was a call for what can happen under the sign of experimental fiction. So that's volume 3. This is volume 1. So just, you can see the hardcover, it's like cloth, it's a beautiful object. You can see the kind of people who are in it. Here's volume 2, these are out of order, I apologize. So this was an entry for the letter V, submitted as fiction, an excerpt. So the epigraph is by the great legendary Korean poet Kim Hae-sung, of the feminist and the grotesque, and this is from her poem, A Hole. Where's the hole's end? And then the first epigraph is from NASA's website, astrophysics page, focus area, black holes. Don't let the name fool you. A black hole is anything but empty space. A valley makes a kind of hole. A hole open on 2 sides. Korea, an island on 3 sides. South Korea, an island. Water, water, water. DMZ, North Korea. Water, water, DMZ, the People's Republic of China. I was a hole and I brought it myself to Miguk, beautiful country, America, the United States. carried a train of holes, holes of smoke, holes of sky, holes of water, holes of rice milk. I was an uncanny guest, 2 years old. A week after arrival from Korea, a brother born in America asked, "When is she going back?" Like the heavenly maiden with too many children to carry, too many holes to go back there. There is a limit to canniness, but not to being uncanny. It is infinite, or Muhan. These are the charts. They are in the illustrious publication Wikipedia. This is the one in English, and so there's 2 axes, familiarity and human likeness, and there's 2 lines, entities that are moving and entities that are still on this uncanny valley chart, right? So at the top of the uncanny valley in terms of familiarity and human likeness, in terms of closeness of those or the amount of those, it's the most, right? Because it's not just human likeness, it is the human, healthy person, right? And so the dotted line begins with industrial robot. It's neither familiar nor very human. The humanoid robot is more familiar, more human-like. And then we go down to the corpse, which is very human, but unfamiliar. At the bottom is the zombie, the reanimated human. Here are prosthetics, and up, Onraku puppet, just kind of still and moving, going up to the healthy person. And the still line is the stuffed animal, goes down and comes back up. So here it is in Korean. So that's just the beginning of a really long, most of what I write is really long. It's prose poems or essays or fiction. It's all kind of, one thing. I have some lineated poems, but it's mostly not. So the next poem is a complete poem on 1 page, one of the few, from the What Heck's most recent book, and the title is "An Orphan Receives Her DNA Test Results from two commercial companies, an abecedarian." I have extra words in there, I apologize. Okay, so I'm gonna read that poem. Oh no, I'm not, just kidding. This is the abecedarian form, a little bit about it. The earliest examples are Semitic, often found in religious Hebrew poetry. Ancestry laid upon a curse, a jinx, blood, and another thing molten, reveries of my face, the facade behind my face. Called to account the country's deviations of echolocations, dead, mine, dark detained, ever banked in an ethnographic afterlife. Fell, deep sleep postponing my rewrite, rotate, mutate, genes to be circumnavigated by spit-polished explorers. How is a child's globe a work of colonial conditioning? In this condition, the What Hex in miniature jumps from gene sequence to succession. Pattern recognition. Kinship, failing upriver descent. Life maps itself in vials sent via the real mail. Archaic method, homesick for the gold horses of its origins. Never miscalculate genealogical disruption's ability. Orphan your ancestors in the underworld above. Who tends graves, pours the prayer of soju when the dead need music. Shall this be our final quarry, silent as a doe and daughter, reading the light, sowing a shade, a haunting, sold to a centrifuge, the sterile shine of its exposed aperture now, travel to the Neanderthal, Witness the heavy brow-boned branch fork and break. Our dead underestimate us, time machines drifting at the rate of future's arrival. Venn diagrams of past and speculation, where will we repose? Collected, finger and jawbone, dusted dictionary xenomorph, alien self, foreign. You, incarnate in the disciplined nation of the contemporaneous stranger, zealous for the sweet peace of the unborn, as yet unburied. So everyone except pure European people have some Neanderthal DNA, and so that's when I got my results back. That was one of the things I found out. So they remain with us. So this next poem, it's a section in a longer poem, which is, I was trying to think about, well, the beginning of war. When did humans begin to make organized war? What preceded organized war? So the poem is Dream of the Bronze Age Man, and then it started around the 15th century BCE, so there's been continuous human habitation on the Korean Peninsula since well before that. So the bronze tools, very few people possessed them. They were very costly, and they served either as symbols of authority or as ritual instruments. So they had no quote-unquote practical application. So that poem, this piece is from this book, 2012. Will I ever get to it? That's another question. But I want to explain. So this is Gary On here. Some of you who've read Autobiography of Red by Anne Carson might know, have spent some time with poor Gary On, the monster of fraud, because he had a human face but would hide his tail behind him. He was the son of winged horses and the grandson of Medusa and the nephew of Pegasus. He's the one who possessed the fabulous herd of cattle whose coats were stained red by the light of the sunset. And Hercules was sent to fetch these as one of the 12 laborers. So the illustration on the cover is from Gustav. Gustavs are with us this week. It's not on purpose. Gustave Doré's illustrations and Dante's Divine Comedy have become so intimately connected that even today, nearly 150 years after their initial publication, his renderings of the poet's text still determines many people's vision of the commedia. Sorry, the little N is like tucked behind. So this is excerpt. Dream of Bronze Age Man. I am a son of heaven. Let my dolmen break the horizon with its back of bone, stone shoulders with a door like no other. My body, my bronze, my tribe, written with an axe that mocks the curve of the moon. Night tumbles over herself to sleep in my armor. Night stains me with metal, and I grow a shell made of metal. I will live yet tomorrow to eat this wealth from the dirt-black hands of my brother. I am a son of heaven, it is proclaimed. My father, my fever, our will is as one. I will talk in this metal and hammer out your command. Bury me here in this endless favor. Thank you. What's next? I don't know. Oh yeah, another standalone poem from the Vortex. He said that we should turn back. The Vortex, I was trying to do a lot of things, thinking about what the dead need from us. My father died finish the book, and also ideas about extinctions, mass extinctions, and the future of the human. What are we evolving into? He said that we should turn back before it was too late, before my child was born. I said, it is not a child. It is a series of veils, each made from the silk of the worms I ate as penance for my crimes. What crimes, he said, have you committed? None, I said. I was given them as gifts to become the mother of all criminals, to give birth to nothing but endless doors made of infinite texture, text, pure feeling. At the word doors, the worms came to life and began producing skein after real, pure white ink, écriture, white creature. He began to slap me, punch me, kick me, and I fell to the loosened ground, chunks of salt falling from my rough hair. Children came startling out of the bushes to collect the salary. Already savoring the rampion, a congregation of hungers. Coiled on the ground, guarding my blue face, my vacant ears, all the murk settled between them, I began to sing a lullaby. Sleep, little thing, shudder thine eyes, bright and divine. All the world's lakes of fire began to plunge further into the earth. This is from the Inferno, and it's a good thing to cannibalize your own work and take things from the public domain. There's a website that every, January, December, something like, posts what texts, include, paintings, arts, things that come into the public domain that year. And so they are free for us, the public. The next is 2 sections of a 12-section poem. The whole thing is titled Gaze, Observatory, Threshold, the other stuff. I'll explain a little bit about it. It's a collaboration. So here's what this is. So the observatory part, I took from this structure, Chamsungdae. It's the oldest surviving astronomical observatory in Asia and possibly even the world. It was constructed in the 7th century in the kingdom of Shilla, whose capital was Sorabal, or present-day Gyeongju. So Gyeongju's down around here somewhere. So Daegu is kind of a bigger city. Busan is second biggest city where refugees during the war from the north and from the rest of the south fled down to Busan, which was relatively safe at the time. So this is my collaborator, Jinny Yu. She's a Korean-Canadian visual artist. She's 47 or 48. She was also born in Seoul, South Korea. So when we were born in 74 and 76, it was still a military dictatorship. The president, Park Chung-hee, had declared himself president for life. And it was a really difficult time for regular Korean people. And this is from her website, just a little bit about her practice and some of her other work. Perpetual Guest 2019-2022, Impossibility Repair, oil on glass. This is Don't They Ever Stop Migrating, which was shown at the Venice Biennale. Okay, so here's the beginning of the poem. And so what happened, we were working together on some commissioned work for a gallery, for an exhibit in Canada, and I just really liked her work immediately. At some point I asked her if she would collaborate, because because I wanted to write this 12 or some number of series about the Korean shaman, the first Korean shaman, Princess Bari. And she said yes. So I wrote in this Google Doc one section. I would send it to her. She would do an illustration and then, paste an image of it into the Google Doc, and then it was just really fast too. It was really an amazing experience. So I really like collaborating with visual artists and musicians and really anyone. So this section 3 that this poem is in has the subtitle "The Underworld Holds All Tethers," and there's another epigraph from Kim Hee-soon, and her family name is Kim. And she has written a long piece about Princess Bari as well, or before me, that inspired me. Women in Korean myths disappear after giving birth. The reason they were born is to produce sons. But there is one myth where no female disappears. It is a fable of the foremother of shamans. Aridegi was the 7th daughter of a king and was abandoned because she was a girl. She was the 7th girl. After she came back from a pilgrimage to the world of the dead, she saved her father and became the foremother of exorcists who help lead those who have died into heaven. So it's a Aridegi reimagining, a sequential collaboration between me and Jenny Yu. 1. The king, a man under a gold hole, gave birth to a 7th daughter. The queen, under a second, smaller gold hole, turned herself inside out, but no son could be found among the folds of her royal robes. The king took birth. Every child born is followed by a shadow child, their placenta. The queen delivered the placenta, and it jumped up and landed on the windowsill and flew away, leaving a necklace of blood drops on the ground below until it was out of sight. So I made up most of this. Don't blame, the mythographers. It was just, it's all in the story. The king looked at his 7th daughter, and the 4 corners of the room turned black and empty and rose up and gathered around his head and engulfed him in darkness, as if he were an object in a bojagi. A thick, tight, invisible knot formed over him. He clapped his hands. The queen caught the air between her teeth. The king called for a box, 6 small doors attached at the edges, a small, movable grave. A servant brought a jade box and carved Aridegi on the cover, abandoned child. The newborn was placed inside the box, and the box was carried to a stream, and the stream decided to become thicker than jade, and thus the jade box floated along with the current. The stream made a rough green ribbon, a long door. A few drops of dark liquid fell onto the river as something flew by overhead. The water swallowed the memory, and it sank to the bottom among the stones. Here's the next image, and then I'll just read one more section. Okay, so memorize this, it's so cool. 2. The box called out to an old married couple passing by, "Cast away." The wife and husband bent over the stream and saw the jade box held by the layers of water. Have you seen water form a staircase? Did you emerge from your mother by way of water, knife, or an invisible rope of shame? The old woman lifted the heavy lid and beheld a small pearl. The old man looked and saw a square of fine white silk. Not until the child gave a hearty cry did they see that it was not a pearl, and it was not a square of silk, but a baby girl. Aridegi, or Barigamju, princess abandoned. Concentric circles, salt, sand, glass, bone, blood. Only one person at a time can pass gracefully through a truly round door, no matter how big it is. When a square is placed within a circle, there is a surplus of unusable toughness. And then I have my final poem. I'm going to switch to my Kindle app. It's from Rough and Savage, and it's titled Paradise, inspired by Dante's Paradise. And you can see this is another Gustave Doré illustration. So it's a poem in 10 parts. They're really short. And this is in the book, an image in the book by Michelangelo Cattani, 1855. Definitely in the public domain. And then the artist John Colthart just put a frame around it, and I did ask him, if this book has, it's from Unbearable Splendor. This book has extensive endnotes and credits for everything. Paradise, first sphere, the moon, the inconstant. When I was a child, I had a rocking horse, a horse on thick springs, its mane ever tousled in the exact same way, day after day, day after year. I would ride it into a hole in the ground that opened just for me, just for my horse and me. The passage of time below was inconstant, while time above rocked back and forth on its unseen springs. Second sphere, Mercury the ambitious. My dream was to reach paradise wherever it was, through the tunnel, along the swinging bridge, down the shaft, through cave after cave. What came through? Trains and babies with their nurses and businessmen dressed all alike. Each time I was tempted to plant mines behind me that would flower into fire, preventing me from being followed. Third sphere, Venus the lovers. In my saddlebag, I carried hearts that I had found among the crowds above ground. I carved my name on their surprisingly tough surfaces, as though they were picnic tables, a pastoral banquet waiting for me. Is this big enough? It could be bigger. Fourth sphere, the sun, the wise. It is dangerous to be wise. You might be called upon to separate mating snakes, eat their skin, be cursed to live as a woman for 7 years, to marry and bear children, and turn back again, burdened by knowledge, by this metamorphosis. Fifth sphere, Mars, the warriors of the faith. So many ways to kill the faithless. Every body can be broken, burned, a bane, a bond. To destroy my enemies, I need only join them, transforming them into my brothers, my family, my people. Sixth sphere, Jupiter, the just rulers. We are guests above the ground, while alive we are uncanny, always falling back into wilderness. Our vegetable love outlasts the centuries, outlasts the protean nature of the justice of the day. Addicted to authority, the ground littered with needles, our blood mingled and tainted, impure. You cannot escape me now, because I am inside you. Seventh sphere, Saturn the contemplatives. No more hangings, no more gas chambers. No one allowed to remain in the center of the labyrinth, guarding their DNA from the world, from the future. No more contemplation, no more waste. Everyone leaning toward paradise. Shields down, and the word enemy will pass from memory. You are my kind. Eighth sphere, the fixed stars, faith, hope, and love. At the end of the world, we will move through this wild, infinite palace, gardens with the softest of flowers, folded, mellow light, all unruly, every room filled with animals risen from extinction, the taste of sacrifice still on our lips. All atoms equal, every snake biting its own tail, and every child tearing down the tent. Ninth sphere, the primum mobile, the angels. At the end of the world, everything will be winged. My neck is a door. Walk through it to the rough and savage woods inside me. Take your torch and burn any monsters to hot ash and dust. I can cough everything out and back into this blazing world. Axe to the frozen sea, Kafka. Hexes and incantations, yesterday's reverie, usher in every little last thing you have. 10. The Empyrean. At last, light all around us, my body a room of lamps, every wick lit as though it were the world's last birthday. Time is now inside me, transfer and possession, never holding anything back, indifferent to my illegitimacy, disinterested in my grief, pierced with all of my joy. Inside me, a second, better person, furnished with perfect recall, my convict, my warden, my guest, my host. That's it for poems. I've got a commercial and then we can have comments. I'm still in, that's why I'm still in. Thank you. This is one of my mentors, Tam, the transparent anatomical woman. She's in Unbearable Splendor. You'll have to buy it. I had another slide that said, please buy, like that fire with like the one meme where it's like, they're drinking tea, and the other one says, this is fine. And I put like, please buy my books. And then this is fine. And at the bottom I said, but at least we're all together. So I'm self-employed. Part of this brief commercial. So I will be starting a new teaching all online of creative nonfiction memoir project, up to 12 people. There's a live info session on September 24th, but if you miss it, you don't have to go to that. My next class begins in October 2025. I think it'll probably be Tuesday nights from 6 to 9. Everything's on Zoom, and you can just go to the loft and look at the year-long writing projects. But that'll be if I get enough folks, that'll be my third round of it, and I really, really love these projects. So yeah, ask me about it later. And then my next book of poetry is a collaboration with the Vietnamese American poet Vicky Now, August 2025. It's from Ricochet Editions. Pre-order is available now from this lovely QR code. It's about, we take the 6 tones, we're taking it from the 6 tones of Vietnamese, and so it's like a Vietnamese, Korean, English, long poem, book-length poem. Okay. My last one, my quotes, read this whole poem if you have time at the Poetry Foundation site. Apologies to all the people in Lebanon. Dedicated to 600,000 Palestinian men, women, and children who lived in Lebanon from 1948 to 1983. And she lived from 1936 to 2002. Poetry is a political act because it involves telling the truth, or we would hope, and then extra quotation marks. She also said, I am a stranger learning to love the strangers around me. So, thank you so much. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings? Nikki?
Thank you for that wonderful reading. I wanted to ask, I'm very curious, you seem to have a lot of collaborative projects. I was just wondering if you could talk a bit about how collaboration has informed your history, your development as a creator.
Oh, a lovely question. I would say it's been more recent, I think. I didn't get to the first part of my poetry career, maybe because I just didn't know about them, but the more I worked and the more people I got to meet, and Minneapolis and St. Paul, in general, there's a lot of cross-fertilization among artists of different disciplines, because they're small cities, but they're very arts intensive, and especially for artists of color who've been like really in the extreme minority for the entire time of statehood. We've been really, my experience has been that people have been really supportive of each other. So VT doesn't live in Minneapolis, but I think just that environment and that community, I would see other people collaborating. I wrote a libretto for a composer that's coming out next year in Texas and Colorado, actually. I'll come visit you. So I am just a shameless person, so I'll just ask people, I mean, maybe not, that's already obvious, but if someone's doing something cool, I'll just ask them if they ever want to collaborate, let me know, it's just writing can be so lonely, and I've also just always loved all the arts, so it's really just just ask, and then like Vicky now surprised me and said yes, Ginny, you surprised me and said yes, and it's people like, sometimes it's for pay, sometimes it's not for, like, we are getting a little bit of poetry, our poetry money, but I see other people who have dedicated their lives to their craft, and I just want to get close to it. Like, I want to learn something, so it's really just for the pleasure of it and to try to keep, growing and just following my intuition. I have so much to learn. So that's really my approach. Thank you. Yes.
As someone who works a lot with visual artists, and like clearly you've like played around with a lot of visual arts yourself too, which is really cool. How do you teach your reader how to like read a visual piece, especially like the more abstract pieces, right? Like how do you teach your reader how to understand that in a work of like poetry or nonfiction or memoir?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. I think I don't. I have a small niche audience of readers. Several reviews of my work over the years have called it, in a nice way, dense. But I always try, I can't help but put in a lot of allusions and like Western literature that I'm metabolizing and exorcising. It's just going to come out in the language, but I always try to also make it sensory so that even if you don't know anything about whatever things that I've read, or that a lot of people who've read Western canonical works have read, that it will still hopefully sound and feel good. There will be something that hopefully is moving. So with the, that series, I think people, I think her work speaks for itself in terms of its mystery. It's an enigma. It's just portals after portals, and these kind of primary shapes that maybe speak to our, evolutionary geometry. Like squares don't happen in nature. Perfect circles, yes, do bubbles and things like that. So there's tension between like round things, like curves and lines. But I don't know. I've gotten like all the reviewers for this book, they've all written about that sequence. They really liked it, and it's narrative, which I do narrative, but it's like I think it's very easy to read, and people really liked the pictures. I don't think they really needed any, but I may be wrong. I don't know. But that's a great question. Yeah, thank you. And then, yeah.
Thank you for this reading. You mentioned that a couple of the things that you read were longer poems, and as somebody who also does long projects, I was wondering if you could speak to the purpose and the process involved in writing like longer works of poetry.
I think it's because I was raised on the novel. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I didn't start reading poetry until I was after college. I love the novel. I also loved these epics from a young age. They're so formal, they're so symbolic, because it's not, and the Greek epics, they're not about white American people. And so it was a relief from like an American consciousness of the 80s, 90s, 2000s when I was growing up, and yeah. So is that why I write want to blame it on someone else. Because I don't necessarily like, it's neither good nor bad, but I feel like I had a lot of language stored up over my whole life, and a few other, like Wang Ping, another immigrant writer who came as an adult to the United States, she said she just had it all stored up, and once she started writing, there was just a lot of it. But I encourage long things. For me, even when I was starting out, it wasn't great in terms of publishing, because one poem is just pages and pages and pages, and not every journal can do that, and that's fine. Now with more digital publishing, I think long length, maybe more welcome. But if that's what is coming out of you organically, I think follow that. I always use a lot of sections and numbers because I think it's just easier to follow. I do feel bad that everything's so long, but that seems to be what's happening. Yeah, so I think embrace it. Thank you. Vanessa?
I loved this so much. I feel like it's going to sit with me for a long time. I just think it's so profound how you grade knowledge from all of these different sources around the world in these different time periods. And it feels very much like a practice of alchemy. And I was really interested in what you just said a few moments ago about exercising these histories and these references. I very much see you taking what is and what has been in your life and by extension in the historical context that you're living in and that has come before, legacies, and making something else out of it, like transforming it. And I just want to hear you talk about that more.
That's such a beautiful way of putting it. One thing I can say is that when I started working with Mark Nowak through a community program started by Carolyn Holbrook, who started this organization, Sassy the Right Place, I didn't know anything, and then he brought to me what at the time was kind of 20th century avant-garde work that had a lot of collage, this French technique of putting together. And so that's kind of how I started, is with taking, I was just like, oh, I'm really fascinating documents because they have created my identity, as an immigrant and as a naturalized citizen, as an adopted person. And so I was just remixing a lot of quotes and documents because I wanted to have a conversation with them. I wanted to talk back to them because as official documents, there's no one really to talk to about it, and they're in the past. But I wanted to bring forward and actually just include the source for any, readers I might happen to get lucky enough to have, that they could make their own judgments about those documents too. And it's a really very personal process of what does this document mean? What kind of language does it use? How does it serve the state? Like, how am I being co-opted to serve the state or the states? So documentary poetry and collage are well-established, 20th century avant-garde techniques. It's interesting, Kathy Park Hong the other month and said she doesn't think there's any avant-garde anymore in poetry. And I think I agree. It's a really interesting conversation. Because when I started doing poetry, it was really weird. Like, people would be like, what is this? And to me, it didn't feel weird. There were other people doing it. I was just, kind of trying to learn. And as far as it's evolved and as it's gotten more like integrated, maybe, although I'm still doing documentary poetry, I think it's just because it's just part of my mind, but if I don't identify it and put it on the page, I won't necessarily be able to reckon with how it's influenced me, or colonized me, or all that internalized patriarchy. I feel like it has to be externalized so I can see it, on the page or in some way. And I also think of poems as arguments. Like I always have an argument. To me, I start with the idea, and then I'll kind of think about the Rolodex of images. But I think it's a great. You can get a chance to do that in our workshop, but I think it's a really great exercise, generative exercise, all kinds of things with source texts, erasures and blackouts and things like that. And you can really start to get to know yourself and how you react to different language and different types of documents, rhetoric, where the power is, where the violence is, where the love is, all those things. It's for me, it's just like I'm just looking, trying to figure out what is going on. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I was just gonna comment that another poet that I really appreciate, who also does that document interrogation, is Layla Long Soldier, where her poems in Whereas were that kind of interrogation of the indigenous people.
Thank you. Lady Long Soldier, and I decided to use slides because she used slides when she came to the University of Minnesota last year with Joy Harjo and who else was it? Was the two of them?
I think it was
The two of them, and she had a new poem that had a shape to it, and she said, I space out at reading, so I thought other people must space out, so let me put it on the screen and sing. So it's a lot of language, especially my poems have a lot of words. I always say, like, you get a lot of words for your dollar. It's a bargain, so yes, Lady Long Soldier, incredible poet. Philip Metris has a book called Sand Opera, which is taking the operations manual of the U.S. military and doing work on it. There's a lot of really interesting work being done in the past and now. I agree. Yeah, thank you for bringing her up. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask kind of about that topic, about how you kind of craft this lecture reading, and you kind of talked about the slides, but could you talk more about kind of the other voices you brought in besides your own, and how you select that, for this reading or for others that you
They're all outsiders or abandoned children. They're people who their society under which they were controlled decided they were disposable in some way or another, right? Kafka's whole family was sent to the death camps. He was in Switzerland for his tuberculosis, or would have been. He was a stranger in a strange land, being a Jew in the, part of the Austrian Empire, but spoke German, was middle class, like people who are just always been drawn to people who are writing from some kind of outside. Often their books are banned at the time, because the ideas are dangerous. I really think that that's our purpose, is to use this privilege of free speech and free press to be as dangerous as possible. There's just so much violence in this world, as we know. Thank you. I just learned from other people. So that's what I would say. The voices, I'm just always trying to learn from other people, especially who've been through eras, and shown us how to live with. They're making that shared public memory, right? Even though they don't know if their work's going to survive. And I just like that seriousness, like underneath all the ridiculousness. Like I'm a very serious, sad person underneath, right? This is why the work is sad. So that's that's what I do. I realized really, I'm writing for abandoned children, other abandoned children who have also been expelled by the state, you know, so that's really my work. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.